Good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the lunch boxes. Apparently you did, because a lot of us are still outside. We had this morning really riveting discussions and presentations by fantastic speakers. And we now have a good picture of what... Sorry. We now have a good picture of what big actors in the smart city world are doing. And what we'd like to do for this afternoon and tomorrow morning is to go a little bit deeper in the central theme of the conference, which is smart city, what's the added value? Well, what do we envision when we think about smart city? Here are just a couple of examples. What we envision is, for instance, full automation of the city infrastructures, the electric grid, the water grid, the transportation grid, the Internet of Things. You know, every object in the city has an IP address. Full open data. Any citizen can access all the city data. Intelligent wireless sensor networks, allowing us to see all the fluxes, energy, water, people in the city in real time and throughout the day. Accurate simulation of urban future scenarios to allow us to predict the impact of any planning decisions, and so on and so forth. But the question is, for what purpose? Let's step back and think about what are the needs of cities, most of them being not smart, dumb cities. The needs are jobs. For instance, lower crime rates, no power outage, safe natural gas distribution, less water main breaks, limited flooding damages, and others. One way to see it is to sort those needs into three fundamental city needs, which are functionality, attractiveness, and resilience. City functionality, we can define this as being the ability of a city to provide basic services to its citizens, water, electricity, for instance, at an affordable cost and with good reliability. We gave many examples of related to the electric grid this morning. I want to take an example related to water. This is a picture of a water main made of wood. And there are still many of those in the US. So the basic functionality of basic water service in the US is threatened because of an old and unreliable infrastructure. And it is urgent today to use the resources that are available to renew this old infrastructure. That's the current need. A second fundamental need, city attractiveness, which is the ability of a city to attract talents and businesses. Now the competition among cities is global. As some of us in the audience, I chose San Francisco over Paris to live and work. Same thing for businesses. They weigh the pros and cons of locating in cities across several continents. The competition is global and therefore may be harsher. Working on attractiveness for some cities, that means stay at the top of the rankings. For some others, this is more of a vital issue. For some cities who, for instance, have lost their manufacturing base, attracting businesses is really vital so as to redevelop. And the last fundamental need, city resilience, which we can define as the ability of a city to live through shocks. These shocks can be man-made or natural. And one example that was already quoted today, this shock can be a hurricane. So this is a picture of lower Manhattan after Hurricane Sandy with really big power outages. So how can smart stuff, smart city approaches help with these needs. One way to define smart city approaches is to see two sides in it. The first sort of traditional side, on the left side of the slide, information and communication technologies, using ICT to improve the real-time operation of the city. And the second side of smart city approaches is using modeling and simulation techniques that are able to help us improve the long-term planning of a city. So that's how we divided the panel sessions for this afternoon and tomorrow morning, looking at the two types of added value of these fundamental needs, which are attractiveness and resilience, and how these two sides of the smart city approaches can help. Now, there's a downside that was also mentioned this morning to deploying smart city approaches, and that's cybersecurity. We will not be able to deploy smart city approaches if we don't manage the cybersecurity risks. And that was well illustrated in the masterpiece Dyad 4, where cyber terrorists take control of the transportation grid, the electric grid, also of the stock market. So one option to deal with this cybersecurity risk is to rely on calling Bruce Willis. If you don't have this option, we're going to talk about this, other options, during our last panel sessions tomorrow morning on cybersecurity. With that, you will have, during these 4 panel sessions, fantastic speakers, and I hope you dare challenge them with your questions.